Hello, how are you? Um, I thought I'd make a video summarizing my experience at the festival I went to about 10 days ago. It's a festival at Hay-on-Wye in Wales, the UK. And yeah, I had such a lovely time. I thought I would make a video telling you all about it. It was such a lovely experience. The weather was fantastic, which is unheard of here in the UK. We normally get mud up until our knees. So yeah, it was amazing weather. The atmosphere was vibrant. The talks were great. Also, I wanted to tell you about Ben. The reason I actually ended up going to the festival was because Ben, he is a Crack in the Nutshell fan, and he happened to see my picture in one of the meetups I go to in the city where I live, and he recognized me. He basically has been a subscriber for a few years, and he said, "No way, is this Dolores from Crack in the Nutshell? I can't believe it." And he kind of mentioned that there was this festival, if I would like to go. And it was a bit of a challenge, to put it mildly, to actually organize everything so I could go there. I've got a little one, and it's not easy for me to organize everything so that I can go somewhere on my own. So this was a little holiday for me, which was well needed. It's only 2 days, but yeah, it was really nice. My first Cracking the Nutshell fan that I actually met in person, and he was so lovely. I was over the moon. I never, believe it or not, met anybody who actually knew me from my videos, and I actually met them in real life. So that was fantastic. Okay, so I'm rambling. I would like to summarize a few of the talks I went to and discuss some of the ideas that were covered, because they are basically the ideas that I like to talk about in my videos usually. So, oh yeah, I wanted to tell you something before I go on with the discussion. Guess what? I got to meet Rupert Sheldrake. Yay! I was so excited. The books are excited too, I think. And guess what? I got to meet Rupert Sheldrake. Yay! I had wanted to meet him in person for such a long time. And funnily enough, many people think that I actually agree with his work, or that I admire his theories. And while I admire what he does and his research and his theories, I don't necessarily agree with what he says. The reason I admire him so much, it has not so much to do with what he says. It has to do with the fact that he just keeps going over the years, despite all the stuff, that he is thrown at. People basically throw tomatoes at him, don't they? I mean, you look online and the criticism can be quite harsh. But he keeps going and going, and that's what I admire. To be a heretic scientist takes guts. The mainstream can be quite unforgiving when it comes to fringe ideas, and yeah, he just keeps going over the years, and he never gives up, and I admire that so much. I really do. So I told him, and yeah, I then said, "Do you remember a couple of years ago there was this video going around with you and Richard Dawkins as a couple of South Park characters?" And he's like, "Yeah, I never knew where that came from." And I was like, that was me. And I don't know what he made of it. I mean, this crazy Spanish woman just, going on about that. And I told him that I spent about 5 months making him blink and move his arms around and making Richard fart and all the rest of it. Obviously, that's the funny top layer. There was deep meaning in that video, obviously. But yeah, he was quite amused. And then he had to leave because he had to go for dinner. But yeah, it was nice to let him know. So yeah, that was quite enjoyable. Right, so let me go. My papers have fallen. Let me get them. I would like to actually talk about some of the ideas that were covered in many of the talks that I went to. I went to about 7 or 8 during the couple of days that I spent there. So one where which had Rupert Sheldrake as one of the panelists was called Matter, Mind and Mystery. The other one that I really liked was when time stands still, which had Liz Molin in it. Some of you might recognize him. He has written a book called I've got it here. No, it's a book called Time Reborn, and it discusses the idea of time being brought back into physics. And I'll talk about this later on because it's really interesting. It's very relevant to the topics that I usually discuss in my videos. So then there was other talks discussing epistemological subjects to do with our knowledge of the universe, truth being elegant, many theories. We look for theories that have got elegant equations and so on. That one had Marcus du Sautoy in it, which it was really nice. It was a good talk. And then there was a really interesting one called Traveling Through Time, which was about, time travel, basically. And I'd like to discuss some of the ideas that were covered there. And then there was another one on space-time and the fact that nowadays space-time is being postulated not to be fundamental by many physicists and philosophers, and that was discussed and was really interesting as well. Okay, so I'll start with the first talk. I've made some notes, and I hope you forgive me for maybe I go rambling about things without much direction. I'm a lot better making videos which have got a script where I can put my thoughts clearly and I can cover everything in a concise and precise manner so that everybody understands what I'm trying to say. Usually my mind is very chaotic. I've got all of these things I want to say and I don't necessarily deliver the message in the most eloquent way. So I'll just consider this video a bit of practice for myself so that I get more used to speaking in front of the camera without a script. But I've got some notes and I'll try to follow them. So I'll start with the first talk, which was Matter, Mind and Mystery. This one had Rupert Sheldrake in it and John Searle, the philosopher. Some of you might know him. And a lady called Ophelia Deroy. She was, I don't know if she's a philosopher or a neuroscientist, but her work involves philosophy of mind and cognitive neuroscience. I'll read you the excerpt from the Matter, Mind and Mystery talk, and then we'll go from there. It says, in a largely secular age, it is easy to suppose we live in a purely material universe. Yet our thoughts, memories and experience, from the brilliance of a sunset to the sound of a baby's cry, are immaterial. This refers to the concept of qualia, subjective experience, subjective qualitative experience, what something feels like, colour, sound and so on. Can the material world explain the immaterial? Or is the immaterial another realm entirely? And, all the panelists agreed that ontological dualism was not an option. This view posits the separation between mind and matter. They are viewed as separate substances, whereby the immaterial mind and the material body, while being ontologically distinct substances, they somehow have to causally interact with each other. And that is a problem in the philosophy of mind. There's plenty of examples of philosophers discussing this subject for centuries. So what were their views? Well, John Searle, who is a philosopher, he he says that consciousness is not an illusion. He's not an eliminative materialist, but he basically sees consciousness as a biological property, just as stomachs perform digestion, brains produce consciousness, and he doesn't see any mystery in there. He clearly stated that he thought that with time, neuroscience was going to discover or to be able to explain the way that brains produce consciousness. He didn't seem to be too fussed about the hard problem of consciousness. Perhaps later on I'll explain what the hard problem is for those of you who are not very familiar with it. And then there was Ophelia Deroy. Her views seem to be very much in line with eliminative materialism. In her view, there is nothing to consciousness other than the physical interactions of certain complex systems, such as brains. I was quite shocked, to be honest, with her position. I'm quite familiar with eliminative materialism, but I've never really heard someone before in person so convinced the reality of matter is so real, and the reality of consciousness, not so much. It's quite puzzling. To me, it seems so obvious that we feel, we experience, therefore consciousness exists, is one of those fundamental starting points, one of those assumptions that seems so obvious that no one can deny it. Yeah, so summarizing, Ophelia sees nature, humans and all organisms in a mechanistic, reductionistic way. Things seemingly can be explained using mechanistic models, and I suppose that, like John Searle stated, she would agree with him in that she would think that, sooner or later we will get there. Neuroscience will find the way to extract consciousness from matter, to give us an explanation as to how that is produced. So yeah, that was pretty much her view. And then there was Rupert. As many of you might know, Rupert sees the mind as extending beyond the brain. He has done quite a lot of research, testing telepathy, testing the feeling that you're being stared at, and so on. You might agree or disagree with his theories, but the way he sees the world is more in line with panpsychism. There are many forms of panpsychism, but the panpsychism that Rupert was mentioning was the kind of panpsychism that sees awareness or consciousness being present in all kinds of self-organizing systems. And that includes not just all living beings, sentient beings, animals, plants, and so on, but includes crystals, it includes systems such as planets and galaxies and so on. So, he basically sees mind and matter as part of the same whole, and any system or process is both physical and mental in Rupert's eyes. In addition, Rupert sees nature as an organism, as opposed to, a clock. There are many metaphors we can use to describe nature of the universe. And he describes nature as an organism with purpose and goals. Rupert also mentioned Whitehead and his process and reality, and he linked some of Whitehead's ideas to his own. For instance, mind being embedded in the cosmos, but also the universe being subject to teleological causes and factors. I see Rupert's ideas as an attempt to abandon materialism, to abandon the mechanistic reductionist view, through a particular kind of panpsychism. Although I don't know, I see it more as a patch almost. It feels almost like a patch, just trying to move away from materialism, because materialism has many problems in terms of explaining how mind can exist at all, how subjectivity can exist at all. But it seems that Rupert's view, this is my opinion, purely my opinion only, it seems, it feels like a patch. Overall, I must say I felt quite frustrated with this talk. The reason being, I didn't feel there was a balance. It was Rupert who was the only one who had some kind of fringe ideas, and then there was pretty much the mainstream there. And I thought it would have been a lot more interesting if there had been, say, one member in the panel who was an idealist, say like Bernard or Kastrup. On top of that, if there had been somebody who was a dualist as well, that would have been quite interesting as well. I must say I would have enjoyed a more in-depth discussion covering the hard problem of consciousness. For those of you who are not familiar with the hard problem of consciousness, perhaps I thought I would discuss a little bit what it means and why this is a problem at all, because some might not get it. I mean, some think there is no problem at all, they just don't get it. It's something that either you get or you don't. It was philosopher David Chalmers who came up with the term a while ago. Funnily enough, he was actually at the festival. He was there the weekend before I arrived, so I missed his talks altogether, which is a shame because I really, really like him. And yeah, he uses the term the hard problem of consciousness to describe, in a way, the ontological gap there is between describing nature as made of, being made of inert matter, which by description, by convention, it is something which is described in the third person. It's something devoid of subjectivity. The ontological leap from describing nature in terms of physical interaction, matter, to describing nature in terms of subjective experience. How can something as immaterial as consciousness be produced by something, as physical and tangible as matter? The problem, it has to do with being able to explain why there is something it is like to be something. Why does it feel like something to be a subject? We have got models of the world, materialism in particular, which describes the universe, or you could say physicalism as well. It describes the universe as being built almost from the bottom up. You've got physical interactions and then it builds up, and somehow at some point we think that produces consciousness. But there is a gap there. There is an ontological gap in our descriptions. You've got a theory which is basically devoid of subjectivity, and then you have got consciousness, which is experienced in the first person. Why is there such thing at all? How can you go from one model of reality to one which includes consciousness? So yeah, here's my take on it. The hard problem of consciousness is an artifact. It is something that wouldn't even exist weren't it for the fact that we're actually starting with the wrong assumptions about reality. It's a problem that exists simply because we're stuck in a worldview, namely materialism, which by definition excludes the subject of experience. Materialism is a metaphysical position, not a scientific fact. As Schopenhauer wisely said, materialism is the philosophy of the subject who has forgotten to take account of himself. In an attempt to get rid of dualism, we got rid of all that is subjective and only kept a poor abstraction of the world, namely inert matter. You could start with materialism and now we call it physicalism. It includes fields and so on, but the idea is pretty much the same. We extracted the material world from reality and discarded all the fundamental qualitative ingredients from it. And now we are attempting to find subjective experience in a model of reality which was precisely created to get rid of mind, consciousness, subjectivity, qualia. all of that supernatural stuff we wanted to get rid of, that had to do with the church, and it was something that science couldn't deal with. We only deal with objective third person perspective. So we created this model of reality on purpose. We separated mind and matter to start with, and then we said no, there is no such thing as mind, there is just matter, and then anything else needs to be built from it. And that was an assumption. Simple as that. We got rid of all that is subjective in order to create a model of reality, which by definition, by convention, it doesn't have any subject of experience in it. It is defined as it is to be just third-person perspective. We actually, we had dualism in which it was mind and matter, and we didn't like that at all. We wanted to get rid of all, all the religious connotation, all those souls and all those supernatural things. We don't need them. We just stick to this. It's like tangible, measurable, and we construct the world from this. So we on purpose, we did that. We removed the subject of experience. We removed qualia, qualitative experience, from our view of the world. You cannot extract the whole from the parts. You extract the parts from the whole, but not the other way around. It's an abstraction. It's a model of reality. And somehow people are taking it to be reality itself. It was our own abstraction, which is useful in order to study certain things, but it's completely rubbish when it comes to life, consciousness, and subjectivity, because by definition, it doesn't include them. And the fact that we're trying to find consciousness in it now, it's such a funny thing. And it seems such an obvious thing to certain philosophers of science, philosophers of mind as well. But yet it seems so elusive to the mainstream. It's such a curious fact. I find it fascinating. And obviously, since we purposely removed the subject of experience from our models of reality, it can now only come back, but making it magically emerge from it. We have to push it with a shovel. We really have to insert it in it. We can't just extract from it consciousness because it won't. So we talk about emergence. I'm sure you have, read about the concept of emergence, the idea that there are kind of several levels of reality and several levels of complexity, and that after a certain level of complexity has been reached, somehow magically, because there's no other word for it, magically somehow consciousness emerges from it, appears. Something that wasn't there, all of a sudden it appears. It just doesn't make any sense to me. I know it does make sense to a lot of people, and many, so probably to many of you. And forgive me, I'm not trying to look like I've got the answer and you've got it all wrong. I'm trying to express my opinion here. It just seems pretty obvious to me that we're attempting to do the impossible, that we're confusing our maps of the world with the world itself. I suppose my point is that in the West, we have been taught this model of reality is reality. And this was since we were little. We take it for granted. We take for granted that the world is made of inert matter, and that matter is primary, and that the world is not inherently subjective, but objective. We don't realize that this is a highly abstracted model, and not simply a model, but a model which does not and cannot contain the subject of experience. By definition, we have described the world in the third-person perspective. We have called it objective science. So unless we modify science to include qualia, and which by definition can only be in first-person perspective, then we cannot extract anything like consciousness from it. I think that our experience of the world is inevitably tinted by our cultural biases, and we sometimes trust that more than our direct experience. And that is a very funny thing indeed, I think. What are your thoughts? I've been rambling for ages and I would really like to know what you think. I will make another video, a separate one, because this is becoming way too long, talking about time, space-time, and time travel. Yeah, covering many of the topics that came up in the discussions and some of the talks at the festival. And yeah, I'll just leave it here because this is becoming way too long. I hope that you have enjoyed it. I'm really sorry that it has been a bit kind of chaotic and not as structured, not anywhere as structured as my other kind of presentations. But yeah, hopefully it's been a bit more casual and personal, and yeah, more like being at home, I hope. I hope that you have enjoyed it. Please post the comments down below. What do you think? What do you think about mind, matter, dualism, idealism, panpsychism, materialism? What are your thoughts? I would really like to know what you think. And yeah, like the video if you liked it. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet. And I'll hopefully see you soon. Thank you very much for watching and take care. Bye.